The modern Jewish state of Israel, an incredible country with a very confusing history. To understand how this map came to be, let's go back in time. For centuries, the Jewish people have called this region of the world home. According to the Bible, 4,000 years ago, God gave this land to the Jews. 3,000 years ago, a Jewish kingdom run by the great kings David and Solomon encompassed what we now consider to be the modern state of Israel, along with parts of the modern states of Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria, an area that stretched all the way to the Euphrates River. 2,000 years ago, King Herod ruled Israel, which continued to include lands that are now part of Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. In the year 70, the Romans took over the region, destroying the Jewish nation. While many Jews were exiled, Jews remained living in the land. Each dot represents areas where Jews continued to live for centuries. The region was ruled by various powers, first by the Roman Empire, then the Byzantine Empire. In 634, the Islamic Empire took over, and the area was under the control of various Muslim dynasties. The Crusaders swept into the region at the beginning of the 11th century. This was an extremely difficult time for the Jewish community that remained. In 1187, Saladin, a Muslim of Kurdish origin, took over. Under Saladin's reign, the Jews were safe, and the 13th century saw the growth of the Jewish community in the region. Control of the area would soon pass to the Egyptian Mamluks, and the Mongol Empire would try to push its way into power. The Ottomans took over the region in 1516 and would remain in power until World War I. Following the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in World War I, the British gained control of the region. In 1922, the League of Nations authorized the British Mandate for Palestine, which was to include a national home for the Jews. The League of Nations recognized the historical connections the Jews had to the land. While the origins of the term Palestine are not clear, it is believed to have come from the word Philistines, the group of Aegean people who inhabited the coast north of Egypt during ancient times. The Philistines were closely related to the Greeks and had no ethnic, linguistic, or historical connections to the Arab people. The Philistines were eventually defeated by the Assyrians centuries ago and assimilated into surrounding cultures. When the Romans conquered the region 2,000 years ago and expelled many of the Jews, they began to refer to the region as Palestinia, after the Philistines, in an effort to minimize a Jewish connection to the land. In a move that upset those in favor of creating a Jewish home in the British Mandate for Palestine, the British took 80% of the mandate and created Transjordan, an area to the east of the Jordan River that would eventually become the Kingdom of Jordan. This area was for Arabs only. Jews were not permitted to live in Transjordan. The remaining 20% of the mandate was to be turned into a Jewish state. The British never did give the 20% of the Mandate of Palestine to the Jews. But after the murder of 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, the world realized that something needed to be done. In November of 1947, the United Nations adopted a resolution that partitioned the remaining 20% of the Mandate into a Jewish state and an Arab state. The United Nations proposed that Jerusalem would be under international control. The Jews accepted the resolution. The Arabs did not. On May 14, 1948, the modern State of Israel, whose borders were defined by the UN resolution, was born. On May 15, 1948, the British Mandate of Palestine came to an end. Immediately following the passage of the UN resolution partitioning Palestine, the Arab world began to revolt. Immediately after the Jewish state was born in 1948, the surrounding Arab nations attacked Israel with the intention of eliminating the fledgling country. She managed to defend herself in what is now known as Israel's War of Independence. As you can see from the map, the war resulted in significant changes to the borders of the State of Israel. Israel grew in size. Jordan gained control of the region to the west of the Jordan River, now often referred to as the West Bank. Jordan also gained control of East Jerusalem, including the holiest of Jewish sites, the Western Wall. Israel gained control of West Jerusalem. Egypt took control of the region known as the Gaza Strip. This map documents what are often referred to as the pre-1967 borders of Israel. After the War of Independence, things were certainly not quiet between Israel and her neighbors, but there were no significant changes to the Jewish state's borders until 1967 and the Six-Day War. The Six-Day War was brought on by Israel's Arab neighbors, who once again joined together with the hope of destroying the Jewish state. Well, they failed. Israel was able to defend herself, and in doing so, push her enemies further away from her by taking control of the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, and the area known as the West Bank from Jordan. In doing so, Israel unified Jerusalem. Here you can see in more detail the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. In Israel, the West Bank is referred to as Judea and Samaria, the biblical names associated with the region. Since 1967, Israel has made land concessions for peace. The Sinai Peninsula was returned to Egypt in 1982 as part of a peace treaty signed between Egypt and Israel in 1979. Israel has handed over parts of the West Bank to the Palestinian Authority. Remember, this area was controlled by Jordan until 1967. In 1988, Jordan gave up all claims to the area, and in 1994, a peace treaty between Jordan and Israel was signed. The 1993 Oslo Accords led to the creation of the Palestinian Authority, a group that represents the Arab population in the West Bank and Gaza. As a result of the Oslo Accords, the West Bank was divided into areas A, B, and C. 55% of Palestinians live in Area A, which is totally controlled by the Palestinian Authority. 41% of Palestinians live in Area B, which is civilly controlled by the Palestinian Authority, but militarily under the control of Israel. 4% of Palestinians in the West Bank are living in areas fully controlled by Israel. The peace process continues to explore ways for Israel to both hand over more control to the Palestinian Authority and permanently annex certain portions of the West Bank that would ensure Israel's security and well-being. In 2005, Israel fully disengaged from Gaza. The Israeli military forcibly removed all Jews who had settled in the region and turned the entire area over to the Palestinian Authority. In 2006, the terrorist organization Hamas overwhelmingly won the majority of votes in the Palestinian Authority's elections. Hamas took over Gaza, turning it into a terrorist haven and using it as a launching pad for missiles which have been fired into Israel. As a result of a political rift between Hamas and the other major political group in the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, the West Bank is ruled by Fatah and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, while Gaza remains under the control of Hamas. And there you have it, the complicated story that explains the borders of the modern state of Israel.